Shabbat shalom, everyone. It's so wonderful to see you. One of the greatest benefits of being a rabbi is getting to work with kids and teens and being able to see them grow up and turn into amazing adults and become leaders in our community. That being said, one of the challenges of being a rabbi is sometimes working with kids and teens and attempting to help them navigate life's turbulence and watching as they sometimes stumble and fall and occasionally make bad decisions. Now, if I'm being honest, in my experience, the former usually outweighs the latter. But there are some kids that really just give you a run for your money. And I want to talk about one of those kids who I got to meet while I was working as a USY advisor back in California, and his name was Mitchell. Whew. I want to begin by telling you all that I truly loved Mitchell. I still do. I keep in contact with him. He is one of my favorite people. And I think the reason I loved him so much was that he reminded me of me at a young age, but that also meant he really drove me crazy. As a side note, if you were here last Saturday and caught my sermon about skipping school as a teenager, you can kind of predict where this story is going. Mitchell was a lot. And he was going through a lot when I was his USY advisor. His grandfather that he was really close to had recently passed away, and his parents were in the middle of a bitter divorce, which meant that he acted out a lot. And you never quite knew what he was going to do next. Well, it was summertime, and the USY region of Southern California was doing their annual trip to Disneyland in Anaheim, and I was in charge of 14 kids from Shomrei Torah Synagogue. But the only one I was worried about was Mitchell. In retrospect, it was probably a pretty bad idea to let a bunch of teenagers loose at Disneyland, but I had a system. I made everyone meet up every couple hours, and I would count all 14 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, one by one. And then afterwards, I would let them go back into the park after I made them put on sunblock and gave them a lecture about drinking water, all of this. We did this all day. Meet up, count, drink water, sunblock, go, rinse, repeat. But at the last meetup of the day, I counted 1, 2, 3, and I got to 13. And that's when I noticed that Mitchell was not there. I was freaking out. Apparently, he had slipped away from his group, and none of the other kids knew where he was. I frantically called his cell phone. It went to voicemail. I texted him, and he didn't answer, and so then I was really, really freaking out. So I flagged down park security, and I went up to the Mickey Mouse police officer in his little golf cart. I was frantic. I said, "Hey, I'm a USY advisor, and I lost this kid, and his name is Mitchell." And the Mickey Mouse cop stops me, says in a really intense voice, "Mitchell? Oh yeah. We have him." And I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what that meant. So I said, "What does that mean, you have him?" I said, "You don't want him, trust me. You should give him back." And the guy said, "You need to come with me right now." And so I did. I didn't ask any questions. I got in his little Mickey Mouse mobile, and he drove me to this weird security building that was in the middle of the park that was so obviously there, but none of the guests knew about it. That's Disney magic for you, I guess. It was like hiding in plain sight. And the only way I can describe it was like Mickey Mouse jail for kids. I'm not exaggerating. The guy leads me to this mysterious room. I kid you not, I enter the room and Mitchell is sitting there with his arms crossed, telling a group of adults, "I want my lawyer." And I immediately thought, that's a smart Jewish boy right there. Mazel tov, Mitchell. Then this important-looking guy came out, and he gave me a quizzical look, and he said, "Are you this boy's father?" And I said, "No way." And he told me, this young man thought it would be a good idea to get off of the boat at the It's a Small World ride, and we caught him dancing on the animated sets. And I was in such shock when he said this that I blurted out, I said, "Mitchell can't even dance." Friends, I didn't know what to do or say. I just stood there looking at this kid, my number 14, a kid that I really loved, even though he drove me crazy. So what happened next? I'll tell you in a bit. Right now I have to tell you what this has to do with our Torah portion for the week, Parshat Bemidbar, which begins the book of Numbers. Now, first of all, why is this book even called the Book of Numbers? Well, because this Parsha, as I mentioned earlier, begins with a census of the Jewish people. God commands Moshe to count the people from the various tribes and determine who is capable of being a soldier and who from each tribe will represent them as their chieftain. Now, while it's good for logistics to have a count of everyone in the desert, the midrashim of our tradition present a radically different notion. They say that the reason for the census was not for data, but rather it's because God loves the Jewish people, and therefore he counts us constantly. They note that according to the Torah, when the Jewish people left Egypt, God counted us. Later, when our ancestors worshipped the golden calf, he counted us again to know who died and who survived. And then later in this parsha, when God wanted to rest his divine countenance, his intense presence amongst the tribes, he counted us yet again. The Midrash then does something interesting. It notes that we as people do this too. We count the things that we love. Think about this for a moment, friends. Some people count their money or their cars or their baseball card collection or their Batman action figures. I have 36. But what does God love? God loves us, the Jewish people, and therefore he is counting us all the time. Just like I counted those kids at Disneyland over and over, because we count the things that are precious to us. We count the things that we love. This idea reminds me of another story in our Torah where Jacob worked 7 years for his uncle Lavan for a wife that he thought would be Rachel. Well, it turns out that he was initially duped and he got her sister Leah instead. And so he worked another 7 years in order to marry Rachel. But the Torah tells us again something beautiful. It says, quote, "Those 14 years seemed to Jacob but just a few days because of his ahava, his love for her." Friends, as a side note, today we are celebrating the vow renewal ceremony of Karen and Scott. And while I counted 14 kids at Disneyland, they are counting 14 years together. Mazel tov. Like Jacob and Rachel, they are celebrating 7 years as a couple, 7 years married. And I'm sure, while not every day together has been easy, I mean, have you met Scott? No, I love you, Scott. They do it for each other. they do it likewise for ahava, for love. And friends, that is the holiest reason to do something. Okay, well, I told you I would tell you what happened to Mitchell, so here it goes. After the mean Mickey Mouse cop came in and told me how much trouble we were in, they sent in the nice cop. I call her the Minnie Mouse cop. And she took me aside and kind of just laid it out to me in real talk. She said, hey, here's the thing. This park gets thousands and thousands of visitors a day, and many of them are kids that do bad things. And sometimes when they do bad things, their parents try to sue us. Looking at this incident, yes, what he did was bad, but he didn't get hurt. He didn't break anything. None of the sets or the talking puppets were damaged. So if you sign this paper saying you won't sue us, you can take him out of here, but you have to leave the park immediately. Friends, I signed the heck out of that paper. I signed, I initialed, I don't even know what I signed. It is very possible that the Walt Disney Company now owns me. I could have very well have signed my soul over to Mickey Mouse that day and didn't even know it. I was going to do anything it took to get me and Mitchell out of that room. And after an hour of signing and lectures and slaps on the wrist from the Mickey Mouse Police Academy, they finally let us out, and they kept saying, you have to leave immediately, so we did, but the park was closing anyway. As we got on the bus home, I counted all my kids. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 to 14, including Mitchell the stinker. And one of the kids said, why are you always counting us? And I said, because I love you guys. And I meant it. And we all got on the bus, and I never went back to Disneyland again. Shabbat Shalom.